Truth, where I'm waiting for you. Oh, there you go. All right, internet. All right. I was like, did they say it's okay? Are we allowed to have another day? What's going on? You know me, until I see it, I don't believe it. I don't believe it till I see it. I'm the doubting Thomas of the internet. I have seen it. I have seen it. It is good. All righty. How about that? I have seen it. It is good. All right. Beautiful. What's up, everybody? Good afternoon to all my East Coasters. How's the afternoon? Did you have lunch? How was it? Good evening. If it's evening where you're at, my time zone lasts. Good morning. This is my morning show. I know you're thinking, Ron, it's 11. I'm a comedian. This is my morning show. You know how that goes. And to everyone in the future, Australia, how's the future? New Zealand, you figured out COVID. Now you got to figure out climate change. I know that's a tall ask, but I'm just asking New Zealand, just be like, hey, we're from the future. We figured it out. Climate change. We got it solved. Awesome. Shout out to everyone who makes this show possible. ZT.com, our friends over at ZT.com, ZHITEA.com. Their tea kind of rules. You can get their tea wholesale now because of the pandemic. They're an amazing independent tea shop out of Austin, Texas, run by a big lefty and friend of the show, Jeffrey. They supply the tea to Get Your News On with Ron. The Monk's Blend is one of my favorites. The Raspberry Pecan is one of my favorites. Makes an amazing holiday gift. Please check them out. And maybe, just maybe, in 2021, we're going to see a Placone tea. Cross your fingers. And our friends over at triageoil.com, TRIAGE oil.com. Trendy Nay educates the public on cannabis issues, and he also has a topical pain oil that you put on your body. He supplies me with that pain oil, and I use it all the time. It has done wonders for my neck, and he always throws a few guitar picks in his care packages, which is very kind. So check that out, triageoil.com, TRIAGE oil.com. My guest today is a friend of the show. She's been on before, and here's the fun part. I asked her on today for a particular reason, and I'm curious if she's going to be able to guess it. But please welcome back to the show the host of Savage Joy, and she is also the co-author of the Yes Queen Chronicles. You can check out that book over at savageandpat.com. It's a fantastic book. It's hilarious. I've read it myself. Please welcome back to the show, Savage Joy. Joy, what's up?
Hey, thanks so much for having me back. This is probably maybe our 20th show together.
That sounds about right.
But it's always fun.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to have you on today for a couple different, like a main reason. Like, I mean, first of all, this is the last week of Get Your News On with Ron for the year. I always take a break at the end of the year for a little while and then come back like second week of January. So, I wanted to have some of my favorite folks on before the year's out. But in particular, there was a reason why today was like, yeah, I want to have Joy on today. Do you have any guesses why that could be?
So one thing I thought of, which is probably not feasible, is my name is Joy and it's Christmas time and I was born in Bethlehem. Okay, so that was my my one thought. Then I texted Pat and I asked him if he can think of anything. He said, "Are you pregnant?" I said, "I got my tubes out a year ago." And he said, "It's a Christmas miracle. You're having baby Jesus." So it could be one of those. Other than that, I have no freaking clue.
Those are both amazing guesses, but especially Pat's guess. Shout out to him. But no, neither of those are the reason. The reason is because today is one of 2 days to really celebrate the life of who was arguably our greatest teacher, to paraphrase Craig Finn, Mr. Joe Strummer. So today it's been 18 years today since the day of his death, and this is one of the days to really celebrate his life. This is not his birthday; his birthday's in August, but his passing day is today. So it's one of those days you got to raise a toast to Saint Joe Strummer. We're doing what Joe Strummer trained us for. And holy shit, I don't know if we ever realized we'd need that training so freaking bad, but here we are nonetheless.
Right on. Much love to Joe and his foundation, who is keeping his memory alive and doing so much amazing work. activist wise, and just, sharing his incredible quotes that were so before his time. I
Right.
don't think he realized just how prevalent his quotes were about, you could say politically, but also philosophically.
Yeah, it was definitely both with him. I mean, he was definitely political and he wasn't shy about it at all, but he was, I don't know like the right way to put it, but he was like big picture political. Like he was like societal political. And I'd like to think he would still be that way today if he were still with us. I'd like to think he'd be talking big picture about society shortcomings more so than he'd be like, talking about electoralism or talking about this or that. I don't know. What do you think?
I have no question. And my dear friend Gretel, who you've interacted with on Facebook and stuff, she is like the hugest like Joe Strummer stan. And she said she saw an interview from the 80s where the band was saying about a socialist just elected in Vermont, which is so amazing. So it's like they
Really?
knew who Bernie was, which is freaking awesome.
Well, I guess that's not terribly well, because I know like Jane had a lot to do with
Yes.
that venue in Burlington, which is a beautiful story. And but I don't know, the Clash probably would have been too big for something like that at that point. Like if they were
Yeah, yeah.
coming to Burlington, they would not be going there. But I'm sure I would imagine they were still aware of that, like that network. And they were probably still very much for it. Maybe more so in England than in the United States, just because that's where they lived. But I'm sure that they were still fairly well in tune with it, even though as a band they were too big for something like that at that point.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to fit all the fans.
Yeah.
But right on. Well, anyway, yeah, that's why I was wondering if you'd guess. I was like, she might if she
Come
starts
on, that's
googling.
kind of obscure, Ron. That's,
Joe Strummer's obscure.
well, no, but the reason.
No, I get it. It's kind of broad. It's like there's a reason. Maybe if I would have been like it has something to do with music, you would have like
Then I would have
cracked
been
it.
like,
Because you
oh,
would
let me Google.
let me see what's trending on Twitter, and you would have seen at least a handful of like Joe Strummer, and then you'd be like, oh, I bet that's probably
Yeah.
what's going down. But yeah, that's why. So
Well, I'm honored that you connect me with such an awesome band.
yeah, I mean, I wanted to have a fellow punk rock enthusiast on today, to talk, to mention that and are you a Hold Steady fan at all?
Not as much. I saw them, I think, a few times opening for other bands, but I'm not opposed.
I'm a big Hold Steady fan, and one of the lines from one of their songs is "Raise a toast to Saint Joe Strummer." I think he might have been our only decent teacher. So,
Yes.
feeling it today. But and you should check out more Hold Steady. I recommend that. They did a weekend of virtual shows, and one of the shows fell on my birthday, so my wife got me the 3-day pass to all 3 virtual shows.
Nice.
And I may have dropped a few hints, like, wearing my t-shirt multiple days in a row after they announced it and casually mentioning what an amazing birthday gift that would be. But nonetheless,
very thoughtful of her still.
yeah, she got me the 3-day pass, and it was like they had it arranged in a way where you could it was a lot more than just like watching a show on your computer. Like they arranged it in a way that there was the show going on where you could watch the band, and then if you had like a separate machine or like on your phone or something, you could be in a Zoom room with other people. So and then they would put people in the Zoom on the screen, so it would like flash on the screen, and there would be like people dancing, and people would be holding up signs saying like where they were from. And like, or they'd hold up song lyrics, or they'd be like, "What's up?" And then, the band's really big on geography. Like they sing about a lot of different cities and places too. So like they'd call out stuff when they'd see it and whatnot. And people would show their pets and stuff like that. And
Oh,
so
that's awesome.
it was a really neat, it's, you know, obviously it's not the same as being in person or anywhere close to it, but it is cool what they've been able to do with like virtual performance to make it feel like, make us all feel connected to something during a time where that is very much missing from our lives. So
Absolutely.
so good times. But all right, so on to some shit, the news. Speaking of, actually, you know what? I do have a little bit of good news today, a little bit, and it connects to music. So there is like a little bit of good news. But first, here's what's going on. The stimulus dropped pretty much overnight, more or less. And this is another one of those, for instances, where they had the quote unquote stimulus relief, and then they also had the spending bill, where, you know, who knows what's all in it? Well, nobody, apparently. Joy, what do you call a government that will pass bills that nobody's read and no one knows what's in it, but won't vote on bills that 70 to 80% of the country wants? What do you call that? What's the word for that?
I'm going to say a circle jerk with stooges. Maybe.
I mean,
circle jerk.
I like it. I mean, I like it because there's 2 band references in there.
Exactly.
So you get an A+. Yeah, that's an A+ right there. But yeah, it's so, I mean, and it's just, you think of all these things that most of the country wants. Medicare for all. You know, you can go back to, they wouldn't even vote on the Save the Internet bill, which was a bill that was 4 pages long, just gave us net neutrality back. Net neutrality, something 83% of the country wants across political spectrums. They won't even vote on this stuff. But here's a bill, no one knows what's in it. And okay, we're fine. And we're supposed to still adhere to the dog and pony show and pretend like it's not a dog and pony show and pretend like it's not a scam. Well, it is a freaking scam. It's a scam. And
Absolutely.
Here's what makes it worse. They're going after people like us too. And when I say people like us, I mean content creators. Here's some of the stuff that's in this stimulus, quote unquote, that nobody's talking about. Check this out. So this is from Fight for the Future. Fight for the Future has learned that the 3 controversial changes to copyright law, the CASE Act, Felony Streaming Act, and Trademark Modernization Act, are in fact included in the must-pass omnibus spending bill. So more than 20,000 people had called on House and Senate leadership to remove these dangerous and unnecessary provisions from this bill. I was one of those people. I signed the petition. I know a lot of y'all did as well. We were tweeting it out. So here's what Evan Greer, friend of the show, here's what she had to say about this. This is atrocious. We're facing a massive eviction crisis and millions are unemployed due to the pandemic, but congressional leaders could only muster $600 stimulus checks for COVID relief, but managed to cram in handouts for content companies like Disney. The CASE Act is a terribly written law that will threaten ordinary internet users with huge fines for everyday online activity. So the CASE Act is the act where if you post a meme or if you post certain types of content, because of these overreaching copyright laws, which again, these copyright laws don't help creators. It's not like laws like this help artists get paid better for their Spotify spins, which should be happening. What it does do is it allows people to penalize other people on the internet. And it'll penalize people for doing things that are fair use too, like using video clips, using articles. Who knows where it's going to end? We've seen time and time again that changes to copyright law have profound implications for online freedom and expression and human rights. These types of decisions should never be made in closed-door negotiations between politicians or industry or rushed through as part of some must-pass spending package. Artists and musicians especially are suffering immensely during the pandemic. Congress should be working quickly to provide immediate relief, not cramming controversial poison pill legislation into budget bills to appease social interest. So this is another example of technology and the law are not in sync. So what do? They pass shitty policy that affects people like us.
Absolutely. And how many streamers don't know that's in there? How many streamers are going to be inadvertently penalized because they're just doing what they do. And all of a sudden, oh shit, are they going to get a fine? Are they going to be taken off the air? What's going to go on? I mean, I've been doing a show over 3 years. I can't count how many times I've gotten, you know, this is removed. This is, and you get it too. It's absolutely crazy. And now, I mean, do you think that this is targeting independent media and such because of the fear of freedom of speech and the fear of us taking on the establishment?
I think that's part of it. I mean, I think there's a number of things going on. I mean, I think it's also the lobby of all these, mega corporations who just want their quote intellectual property protected. And I think this is also another power grab to, penalize people and make more money. I think this is also related to censorship to an extent, because this will lead to more censorship, not less. And this is all connected to, the Trump administration blowing up Section 230, which, adheres to all speech on the internet. So now all of these entities, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, they're going to censor more, not less, because they're scared of any given lawsuit from who knows who. So they're just going to stifle any speech that they deem as risque. And you're going to have FCC bureaucrats enforcing this stuff anyway. So it's kind of like, in an attempt to try to prevent censorship, you imposed more of it, because people don't understand that you can't fix a problem with shittier policy. But that's the United States government so often. Hey, here's a problem. Let's make it shittier.
Right. And I think another thing I thought of, which may be, I'm not sure, it may be overreaching, but let's think about how many people have canceled their cable since people like us have started shows. I mean, these cable companies are noticing. I mean, they're still rich as hell, don't get me wrong, but they are noticing millions of people unsubscribing and not having cable anymore because of streamers like us.
I think that's definitely part of it. I mean, I don't think any of that is overreaching. I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to dollars for these entities. And so, yeah, I mean, they definitely still see the internet as a Wild West. So they're going to try to change that. And people that I know that a lot of people, it's hard to wrap their heads around that because they can't imagine the internet being different than what we know it as today. But think of how different radio was. Think of how different television was. The internet is still just another medium. Yeah, it's the next step in technology, sure, but it's still just another medium. To think that corporate powers can't control that medium and take it from we the people, you're just being naive. They can. And they're laying the seeds to do that. I mean, from the repeal of net neutrality to gutting Section 230 to controversial overreaches like this, and what happened? It was pushed through overnight in a spending bill where no one knew what all was going on. What else did they do that with? What else did they push through overnight where no one knew what the hell was really going on and what was in something? The Telecommunications Act. Well, yeah, the crime bill too. Yeah, there's a lot of examples. But like, what I was thinking of the Telecommunications Act, because that,
right.
I mean, that was arguably some of the worst media policy legislation of both of our lifetimes. Same story. No one really knew exactly what it was going to do. No one really knew exactly what it was. It has had catastrophic effects. Here's another moment of that same thing happening. And who knows? I mean, this could be another day where it's like, we'll remember the day this was passed. This was the catalyst that changed the internet as we know it.
Right, absolutely. And I'm not sure if you saw this, and I don't know the exact verbiage, but this morning I saw a post that's screenshotted and going around. AOC made a post, and all other things aside, she made a post that said, if you guys didn't want me to vote for this, you should have told me. And we're all just like,
Has she checked her Twitter?
like, for like, there's so much shit wrong with that post. I can't even wrap my head around it. Like,
I can't either. This is my first time hearing about it.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. I had to read it several times because I was like, this is not. I just screenshotted it. Let me see.
Oh, I wasn't doubting you. I know it's. I
I'm just
believe
trying
you
to
that you
find
said
the
that.
exact words.
Was there a
Because
bunch of people underneath saying we did?
yes, like thousands of comments like I'm a constituent and I did. Yeah, it's really incredible to pass it on to us when we're the ones who got you elected, whether we're in New York or not. We campaigned, we, propped you up, we did all these things. And, there's tons of us activists who are, posting online and saying, I've interviewed her. I've spoken, I've been a scheduled speaker at a same event. She was a scheduled speaker. So I've interacted with her. Like, for her to say that and take it out on us and say we should have told her what to do. We're telling you what to do with something else and you're not going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, we're also encouraging you to force the vote, and you don't want us to do that. And apparently, we're not supposed to tell elected officials what we want. We're just supposed to be nice to them. Meanwhile, here they are telling us, "Hey, tell me what to do." So what is it? What is it? Are you above scrutiny? Are we not supposed to encourage you to force a vote on healthcare during a pandemic? But we are supposed to tell you how you're supposed to vote one way or another? Or can we just criticize you selectively? Like, what's the freaking rule? Or maybe it's just you're supposed to be an elected official for the people. And this isn't just, this goes to everyone, not just AOC. You're supposed to be an elected official for the people. But because we have a banana republic corporate coup of a government, nobody is. And that's the freaking problem. That's the freaking problem. So, yeah, you can't take this out on us. We can take it out on you because you are, I mean, when people say stuff like, well, AOC is not part of the problem is da 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 da. It's like, well, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. We elected AOC because we wanted her to be part of the solution. So if she's not going to be part of the solution and just passively accept the problem, then she's turning her back on the movement that got her elected. And that doesn't just go for, that goes to everyone else too. That goes to the squad, that goes to the entire progressive caucus. Although, describing some of the members in there as progressive is quite a stretch. But nonetheless, they're in that group or whatever. So, well, okay, if you're going to campaign on healthcare, we expect you to do something about it. And if you're just going to roll over and do nothing about it, I mean, what is wrong? Like, the NHS got voted down 21 times by the Tories. 21 times it got voted down. There was a point in time where virtually no doctors were for it, but people kept pushing. They, kept turning public opinion. And by the way, we're a lot further along than that now because over 70% of the country wants Medicare for all. Canada got their healthcare system one freaking province at a time. We're going up against one of the most powerful entities in the world, really, the big pharma in the United States, the insurance industry in the United States, which, because it has been allowed to exist as it has for so long, it is insanely powerful. They are going to do everything in their power to try to stop something like Medicare for all from ever happening. So we are up against this behemoth. We have to throw everything in the kitchen sink at this thing if we want any shot at all. And you're going to say now's not the time for a vote? Like, come on. Come on.
And it's very like, well, the Republicans won't put it through. Yeah, we know that. But you still should show up. You still should say, you know what? I'm still going to represent the people, even if it's not going, even if it'll get denied. you should still show up. You should still say, you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to represent we the people, and I'm going to tell you I'm not voting for this shill unless we get a floor vote. Whether it's successful or not, we know the likely outcome. That's not the point, and people are missing that point. They still should be the activists they say they are. I recently interviewed Bernie Sanders' brother, Larry, and he's in the UK. He is the cutest, sweetest thing in the world.
Do you think they have really funny conversations when they're just like,
oh my God.
Like, do you think he's like, hey, Bernie, did you guys figure out healthcare yet? And he's like, fuck you, Larry.
Yeah, he was telling me some of that. And
really?
He's an elected official. He represents the healthcare in the
He's a Green, right?
Green Party.
Right.
And he was, we were discussing the differences there. And he's like, I don't understand how you guys don't have what we have. And it was like, it was crazy.
You're like, fuck you, Larry.
Larry. Yeah, it's like, it was kind of interesting to, he shared some of what they talk about and how frustrating it is for Byrne to like see what his brother has and gets to accomplish, and then all the roadblocks Byrne has. But you
guys are giving more money to the NHS. They took down a fucking statue and were patting themselves on the back. That's all they did here. They just took down a statue.
This is a bunch of bullshit. This is malarkey. Yeah, I mean, I think what it comes down to is, it is frustrating to see, so many walls put up, but at the same time, he was filibustering for hours and hours on the floor, trying his hardest to get us more.
To get us a crumb. Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable.
So at least he showed up. So that's the thing. We should be able to expect that at the very, very least, they will fight for us. And we're not seeing a lot of that. He was standing with one other person. Where's Joe and Kamala? I don't friggin' know. They're sure as hell not standing next to him.
They've been so quiet this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's another thing that just, I've never seen anything like this in my life, where a president-elect is just on the sidelines doing nothing. These repulsive things are happening. And by the way, we're going to go over some of the actual, there is one shred of good news. We've been covering some of the good news that actually did happen in this stimulus. We have been, shining a light on it and saying, hey, here's a good thing. Here's a good thing. But I'm not going to lose the overall theme here. The bad outweighs the good by a lot. And yeah, have you ever, can you think of a time in history where a president-elect has just been on the sidelines like this? Am I the only one who thinks it's really fucking weird, or do you think it's weird?
It's weird. And especially the time we're in, we have mass unemployment. We have mass, uninsured people. We have a pandemic. We have all these things that are unprecedented that nobody has ever dealt with in our lifetimes, which just makes it all the more bizarre that they're silent. And something I've said before, that it's kind of, funny and weird, but they haven't even respected us enough to lie to us, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. Sorry, keep going. Yeah, no, I said something similar where I was just like, they're not even trying to pretend anymore. They're not even bothering to insult our intelligence.
Yep. And it's like, should they know? But at the same time, at least act like you're going to do something for us. They literally are like, we don't care. We're making it blatantly clear. And that's why I was like, well, I guess you don't want my vote then.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, do you agree with this sentiment? I've said that, because I've always been, as long as I've been awake politically, I've been, a lefty. And I've always felt like, well, I don't really have a home politically in the United States, but I guess this is kind of the closer way to get to the world that I want, blah, blah, blah. And in 2016, all of my worst suspicions about the Democratic Party were confirmed true. And now in 2020, all of my worst suspicions of the United States government were confirmed true. Like, and I'm not going to sit here like, oh, I didn't know it was kind of a Wall Street scam until now, but it is worse than I think most people could ever wrap their heads around. Like I would not have predicted it would have been this bad, where it's just an apparent, just beyond a slap in the face. It's not just like, oh, your government's being neglectful, your government's being irresponsible. No, your government is being hateful. They hate you. And that is not an embellishment or an understatement. They hate you.
Absolutely. I made a post yesterday. There's a great organization, To Write Love on Her Arms. And it's suicide prevention, but it's bands. They play shows,
cool.
They promote it, things like that. And it's really, I recommend checking it out. It's wonderful. I've donated to them for years. And I started thinking about yesterday, so many of us are just so damn depressed about so much crap. And, I made a post that said, people are more depressed than ever. Suicides are higher than ever. Things like cutting is higher than ever. And people are, using substance abuse and alcohol more than ever for escapism. And, people can't afford their medications. People can't afford to see a therapist. Things like this. This is outright violence. There is no other word for it. It is violence. You are telling the people that they are in a dire need, and you will not even talk to them, let alone help them. Trite saying, but the blood is on their hands. It is.
Do you think we'd be better off if we just impeached the entire thing? Like, just got rid of all of it and had a people's legislature, like what Mike Gravel calls for?
That would be practically utopian compared to what we're dealing with now.
And it'd be a mess, by the way. It'd be a mess. It wouldn't be,
yeah.
I mean, it would be, but I agree that it would be infinitely better than what we have now. We'd be better off.
Absolutely. I guess, my concern at that would be, it still would it not still be the same people picking the people? Because
it would cut out the middleman. When you have a government that is basically just a human shield for Wall Street, which is all they are, it just cuts out the middleman, and instead it's just like a people's legislature, where it's like, yeah, you're still going up against those behemoths, but it would be it would be similar to the way ballot items work and stuff like that. It would be like, we have the money, we have the power, so we're going to try to trick a bunch of people into voting against their own interests, which will work a lot. Will it work all the time? No. And I think overall we'd be better off. I mean, if every decision in this country was determined via a ballot measure, people would agree to a lot of really messed up shit that would make their lives a lot worse because of very powerful entities. But they'd make some good decisions too. And they wouldn't be able to stop a vote from happening for something that 70 to 80% of the country wants.
Absolutely.
That scenario wouldn't exist.
Absolutely. And that's probably why we haven't and likely won't see that situation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're calling for a complete overhaul of the system, but I kind of, I think it's sad we're at that point. Like, let me ask you this, because my answer is yes. Do you think that more people than not would be better off, and I'm talking worldwide and domestically, if the United States just stopped being a country and started being a country, or just didn't.
I've thought about that. If you would have asked me a few years ago, I would have probably had a different answer. I think, and not to sound like a shit lib, but I think, with with Trump and the rise of fascism, which was there just kind of under the covers, but seeing so many people just terrifyingly acting like complete sociopaths. I think that would kind of sway. I don't know, it's hard to say.
It is very hard to say. I just feel if we just kind of let the states do their own thing. I mean, I'm not saying like no, organization whatsoever, but if states were just kind of left to do their own thing, and we did away with basically the empire, I think the world would be infinitely better off. I think that is pretty much indisputable. If the United States wasn't setting the Middle East on fire and bombing all these countries, I mean, they'd all be better off. And
So
I
do you
think
think
that
that we could, like when it comes to war,
Mhm.
I'm in Pennsylvania, so Pennsylvania could say yay and California say nay, and then how would it work? Like most votes kind of wins, or
Well, I mean, I don't know how such a scenario would look, and I mean, I don't know if it's like the states would defend themselves. I mean, I don't really know. I just know that our behavior as a country and what the American government does to its own people, what the corporatocracy and the plutocracy, because I mean, the government's just sort of, I mean, more or less a facade these days. What they do to their own people and what they do abroad is just so morally repulsive and destructive that it's like, geez, it's almost, I mean, I feel like overall we'd be better off if the states just did their own thing and then we just did away with the idea. And I don't want to feel that way. I don't want that to be reality. But I feel like right now it is. There are some people who would be worse off. There are some people, because there are certain states that, would be complete fascist authoritarian theocracies, which we pretty much already are, but they would be a complete dive into those waters if they could be. So people who are stuck in some of those states who don't have the resources to leave, they'll be even worse off. But I would say overall, if you had to do an overall tally, more people would be better off than worse off here in the United States, even. I really do feel that way. I think you'd be better off. I think I'd be better off. I think a lot of people would be better off. And the people who would be worse off, hopefully the amount of people who would be better off would try to help those people. I mean, that would be the ideal scenario.
right? Yeah, that's very interesting. I think we'll have to ruminate on that.
No. It's a heavy question, and there is no right or wrong answer, because there's so many factors that would be yet to be determined. It's just it's just so sad that we don't live in a society where we can confidently say the good outweighs the bad as far as our leadership goes, and we can't say that, and a lot of other countries can. It's not like, well, that's just how it is. No, it's inexcusable where we're at. It is absolutely inexcusable. And, most countries aren't in that situation. Most industrialized countries can't say that. They can say, no, this is, our government has its flaws, and there's shitty stuff that happens. But, overall, like there's a little bit of a shit given about the people who live there. We can't say that. We can't say that.
Absolutely.
But so getting back to the digital rights portion of this, I got off on a tangent. I don't get to talk to you all that often these days. But so here's a little bit of details about the streaming part of this. So Tillis, this is a Republican out of North Carolina, pushes for prison time for online streamers. So Congress has once again put itself in a situation of having to pass a last-minute omnibus bill to fund the government and prevent a shutdown. These truly are must-pass bills since much of the government grinds to a halt without them. So here's what's going on. They want to have the Commercial Felony Streaming Act. They're going to have up prison time, and I think in some cases up to a $30,000 fine for, quote, illegal streaming. Well, what does that mean exactly? Well, you know how obviously it means like if you're streaming movies or something like that, but also remember during the debate season when all the cable news companies decided this was their intellectual property, even though it's a debate, a presidential debate that should be completely open to the public and orchestrated by the public. That's not the way it's organized here in the United States because we have a complete corporate takeover of everything. But remember when they were saying you can't stream this because it's our intellectual properties, and a bunch of streamers and online shows were doing it anyway because they were like, people have the right to see this even if they don't have cable, and people have the right to hear differing viewpoints. And this is our political system at work, and this is the public has a right to this. People like that could be fined 30 grand and thrown in jail. Gee, why is this Tillis guy pushing for this so hard? Here's a clue as to why. In the third and fourth quarters of 2020, Tillis' campaign and leadership PAC received donations from PACs affiliated with the Motion Picture Association, Sony Pictures, ASCAP, Universal Music Group, Comcast and NBC Universal, the Internet and Television Association, Salem Media Group, Warner Music, and others in the entertainment and cable industry that seek to suppress the unauthorized sharing of content. And otherwise, the people who want to nickel and dime you, the consumer, and online speech be damned.
Not shocking. I immediately knew he was going to be bought. This is almost like, as a music lover, you may, kind of remember this, but remember freaking Lars and Napster and stuff? It was kind of like the first taste of like, this is mine. You can't have it.
Yes. Well, and then Lars also was like, I'm doing this for the little guy. Yeah. And everybody knew that was bullshit. We're like, no, you're not. I'm doing it for the little guy. No, you're not, because the little guy, they make their money off of touring. And because of services like this, more people know about their music. That's what's going on.
Absolutely.
I remember that. Of course I remember. Are you a Metallica fan?
Old Metallica.
Oh, yeah. I knew you were going to say that.
I mean, I grew up. I'm 41. I grew up on Metallica.
There's speed metal type stuff. I enjoy it. I couldn't tell you much about it, but I enjoy the sound. And then after that, I kind of was like, like it wasn't really my cup of tea. I'm more of a Jethro Tull guy. That's true.
Wait, I know that name. What did they sing?
Aqualung and Locomotive Breath. Those are their big hits. They're like the prog rock. Well, they're loosely defined as prog rock, but they got that Grammy over Metallica for best heavy metal album, which was kind of goofy because they're not heavy metal at all. They have a flute, for fuck's sake, but they got best heavy metal album over Metallica, and it was just kind of humorous for everybody involved. So that's kind of been a running joke. I mean, you can go to a Jethro Tull show, and sometimes people will like jokingly yell "fuck Metallica." It's all in good fun. I mean, I'm sure there are many people who are fans of both artists. It's all in good fun, but yeah, that's the story there.
I think,
and maybe at Metallica shows, people yell "fuck Jethro Tull." I mean, I don't know. I mean, again, it's just a fun thing. It's not malicious or anything. It's all in good fun, but yeah.
I would go see Metallica and say "fuck Lars."
He'd sue you.
For what? I'm broke. I have nothing.
One time I was watching the the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, like just randomly. And I was watching it in Cleveland at the museum. They used to do a thing where they would project it. It was neat. It was a neat experience where they would project it from the museum itself and you could watch it. And it was the year U2 was getting inducted. And I'm not a U2 fan at all. And I remember a lot of U2 super fans were there. And as soon as they started showing footage of the thing itself, people were like, "Where's Bono? Where's Bono?" And I just said out loud to everyone around me, I just said, "He's probably outside trying to collect ticket money." And I had no friends in that room the rest of the night. Nobody left. There was not one non-U2 fan that laughed either. I had no. I was like 19. I had hair. My hair was the same length as yours. I had a bunch of piercings. And I was like, I don't like U2.
That's amazing.
But so I mentioned that there is, as bad as this thing is, there were a few things that were actually good that were in this bill. The bad outweighs the good by a lot. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise, by a lot. And nobody should have voted for this freaking thing. But here's a victory. This is a victory, albeit, well, I guess it's not fair to say it's small because for a lot of people, this changed their year in a good way. One of the things that we've been pushing on this show pretty much for the entire year was the Save Our Stages Act. That's an act that went to help independent venues who have lost pretty much all their income. We've pushed the Save Our Stages Act on this show. We've signed petitions for it. We've raised money for it. Well, one of the few glimpses of good news in this whole COVID relief thing was it included a certain thing. It included the Save Our Stages Act. Ooh, Congress allocates $15 billion to independent theaters and concert venues as part of the new relief package. The bipartisan package incorporates the Save Our Stages Act. The United States Congress has agreed to a new bipartisan coronavirus relief packages that allocates $15 billion for venues. The relief package incorporates the Save Our Stages Act. So, and again, the Save Our Stages Act, for a quick refresher, it's not perfect legislation. A lot of the money is grants, which means that these venues don't have to pay it back. And that's awesome. But some of the money is loans, which means they'll eventually have to pay it back. And that kind of sucks because they've lost everything. So it's not completely perfect, nor should it have come down to this. They should have been actually getting support this entire time, like other countries did for their small businesses. But for so many people, this will be the difference between whether or not their venue is open next year.
Absolutely.
So this is a win. And I know that again, this relief package, quote, relief package, even calling it such is a joke. And the bad outweighs the good by a lot. But there were a few glimmers of, well, this is a good thing. We covered one of those good things yesterday. They allocated billions of dollars for broadband development. That was a good thing. We'll take that win. And then this is something that, hey, this show's been talking about for about a year. And we got it. This is a win. And there's still work to be done, folks, because they still got to distribute the money. So I recommend everyone go to saveourstages.com and the National Association, the National Independent Venue Association, NEVA. And we need to continue to follow this to make sure the resources are going to the people that need it. But the way this bill is written, it's very clear that it goes to independent venues who were the first to close and will be the last to reopen. So, we got a little victory here, folks, and I want to thank everybody who watches this show, who has also signed that petition. I know a lot of you signed it. Maybe you heard about it on this show first. Maybe you didn't. Shout out to the Eve 6 folks, friends of ours. Max and John, they pushed this very hard via the union that they help run. So this gives us something to smile about.
Absolutely. And I made a donation as a gift for someone. So if you're looking for a last minute gift or something like that, consider donating to a club you see concerts at, or, something like that. They Save Our Stages as well, because you still want to have that place open, not just selfishly, but because that's there's people's jobs there. So yeah, consider doing something like that, because the arts are so important, not just art, but musically as well. So
And comedy. And comedy.
And comedy. Or, someone like me who thinks they're funny, but they're not really that funny. He didn't dispute that.
No, I think I laughed at your book a bunch.
Well, that's true.
I think you're very funny. I am. And yeah, I just feel bad because I wanted to spend a bunch of time on the relief. So I did our good news portion before the last thing I wanted to share with you today. So there's the good news, folks. Hope you liked it. Happy holidays. But here's another thing. If you're in California and you received some relief, you might have to give some of it back. Now, this is fresh off the hills. No, oh, yeah. Buckle in, Joy. This is great. Nearly 1 million Californians may have to pay back some of their unemployment benefits. Right before the holidays, thousands of self-employed and gig workers just found out they may have to pay back unemployment benefits they have already received. It is a crisis. Just before the holidays, many have already spent it on living expenses. So here's what's going on. Now, back in April, the CARES Act kicked in, and for the first time, self-employed workers and gig workers could get unemployment. And I know this because I was one of them. I'm a self-employed guy. I usually don't qualify for anything. Because of that part that they put in the CARES Act, self-employed people were able to apply. And, it's funny. This is fresh off the hills. I was talking to a comedian friend of mine in Pennsylvania, actually a mutual friend of ours, Chris Moen. And I was telling him how I said, I got to give it up. California, they did make it somewhat easy for self-employed people to get a little bit of something. And I did get something. I didn't get a lot. But, I was able to get a little bit because of what I, qualified for or whatever. And that did help because, I lost a lot of my salary this year. I mean, I rely on touring for my living, and that was all completely gone. So I was telling him that, California made it pretty easy. Well, I guess they made it so easy that they're taking some of it back. So here's what happened. They here, I'll read it. I'll read it straight from the article because the article explains it pretty well. Benefits were supposed to be based on their net income in 2019, but in all the confusion of an unprecedented program, many reported their gross income instead. So you were supposed to report your net, and that was how they were going to base how much money they gave you. People reported their gross instead. Here's the fun part. There were places where it asked for your gross. They had someone on the EDD website, and then they're like, do you want net or gross? Oh, it's right here on the website. Gross? Okay. So they've asked for gross during certain times, and then I guess net for other times. I don't remember exactly how I filled it out because this was months ago. But the way it breaks down is self-employed workers needed a net income of at least 46 to qualify for the maximum benefit. And with a lesser amount, the minimum would have been 167. Some people were reporting their gross instead of their net. So they might have gotten, quote unquote, too much. So they have to give it back.
Oh my gosh.
But they're trying to make it, the article goes on to say they're trying to make it so that if it was an honest error, you don't have to pay it back. So we'll see what happens. But potentially, if you are self-employed in California, you might have to give some of your money back.
Oh,
wow. Wow. How nuts is that?
That is absolutely incredible. I don't know why I'm surprised anymore at this shit, but that's just you're relieved, you get some extra money, and then, oh, but sorry, when things do hopefully start to get better, you're kind of gonna have to take some of that money.
Do you think this is rock bottom?
Oh my God. I I like to say I'm not a pessimist, I'm a realist. And I have been a defeatist horribly, especially since Friday. It just kind of hit me like, what the hell's the point of fighting anymore? Like, I'm kind of in one of those ruts. I fear it is simply because the amount of people who are so comfortable with, now we have a dim president and I can get a good night's sleep and things like that. The amount of people feeling that way makes me fear that so many of the protests are going to stop, things like that.
Really?
So,
You fear that?
oh yeah.
See, I don't.
Absolutely.
I don't fear that. I don't think there is. I mean, first of all, and I've said this, and I'll stand by this. If your movement can be put to sleep by a neocon like Joe Biden, I got some bad news for you. You never had a movement. It doesn't exist.
I'm not necessarily talking about us. I'm just talking about the, all the shit libs who suddenly cared about things because it was wrong.
I think they're a smaller group than we realize. They just have a lot of money. I think they're, and to be honest, it's like the Alyssa Milanos in the world, the people you satirize in your book. Those people can't go back to sleep. You know why? Because they were never awake. You have to be awake to go back to sleep. And honestly, I'm like, okay, if a nice sounding president is all you're concerned about, have fun. You were never really on anyone's side. But what's really going on is that people are losing their freaking homes. People are food insecure. And you have so many people in this country that are looking around and going, what the fuck? This is not acceptable at any level. This is not who we are. Straight up. I mean, I know it's a cliche, but it really is applicable. You look around and you just say, this is not who we are. And, some of us have felt that way for a long time. And others, it's like, different things jolt people awake. For me, it was the Iraq War. For me, I mean, when I was in high school, I didn't really pay much attention to politics. And then when Iraq happened, and I was like, why are we in Iraq? And I started reading books that were not introduced to me in high school. I found them on my own or in college. And I started asking questions. And that was my big jolt. It's almost like the world shook me. And I was like, oh, shit. And I saw shit that I didn't see before. In many ways, because I also tried shrooms during that era. But for the first time. But I think there's a mass awakening when people are looking at the world around them, because you can't ignore this. You cannot ignore this. I mean, even if you have a gated community, you still leave that gated community occasionally. You still see what's going on with the pandemic. This cannot be ignored. And I mean, I think more people have stopped defending the indefensible. And that's important. I do think this is rock bottom, because I think that when a society hits rock bottom, it's not like it's just like, boom, we're rock bottom now. That's not how it works. Maybe it works that way for an individual. I think when a society hits rock bottom, you're kind of just bouncing off. You're kind of just bouncing off the rock, and you're just kind of, and because of that, there's some glimmers of hope scattered throughout. There's little silver linings that happen too. Well, simultaneously, you're really in a ditch. And those silver linings, hopefully, what you hope for is that the silver linings get brighter and brighter so that you start turning around and you bring about a better tomorrow. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I hope it does. And I'm going to do everything that I can as an individual to try to make that happen to every vehicle available to me. But it can happen. It doesn't have to go the other way. I don't know. That's what I think.
I hope you're right. I just feel like no expectations, no disappointments.
That's true. I mean, I try not to get my hopes up about anything. Especially electorally. I mean, I am at the point where, again, I mean, well, you know where I'm at. I'm at the point where I'm like, I think everybody should be fired, every single one. I think they should all just be completely fired. We should just have a people's legislature. That's it. That's it. I don't think our system, it can't be reformed. It needs to be just completely overhauled. Like, it cannot be reformed. Our electoral system is a lot like the police. It cannot be reformed. It's too late. That ship has sailed. That ship has sailed. Honestly, probably about 40 years ago, that ship sailed. The reform ship. I think the day Reagan stepped in, that ship sailed. And I'm very, very exhausted by people pretending the wrestling match is real. And I've been done pretending it's real, but I mean, I'm going to call out how freaking absurd the wrestling match is, because if we don't laugh, we'll all go insane. And because I'm not going to pretend it's real. I'm done pretending it's real.
Absolutely. Dem exiting was just, I took like, I think it was 30 showers after I exited, and it just felt wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what more people need to see to see like, okay, this is a scam. They're scamming us. As a country, we are like if a MySpace pop-up ad decided to form a civilization. That's what we are. And I say MySpace because the pop-up ads were even shittier back then.
Although I did meet my husband on MySpace, so that's one good thing.
But not via a pop-up ad.
Well, no, I'm just kidding.
An ad popped up and there was a shirtless guy. No, I've met people on MySpace before. I mean, I met an ex-girlfriend on MySpace before. It was, I mean, I think we've talked about this off mic. It was, in my opinion, the best social media platform. We didn't know what we had till it was gone. MySpace was great. And, you know, I feel bad for the kids who missed that wave, because MySpace, I mean, especially for an artist, like if you were a musician or a comedian or whatever, you could have your tour dates, you could have audio, you could have video, you had a messaging tool, and you could search people via zip code.
Yep.
So you knew, yeah, you could tell people, hey, you're into this kind of music. I'm in this band. We're playing blah, blah, blah. And that was before it became a spam circus, because eventually it did, because it got sold and then it just became like a giant commercial. Yeah. So it was actually like you were intrigued to get stuff like that, where you're like, oh, this band's coming. I might like them. I'm going to listen to them. You could just check out their MySpace page and listen to them. If you liked what you heard, you'd show up to the show. And I mean, people built careers out of that. I mean, bands that are still famous to this day, My Chemical Romance, they would, which personally I'm not a huge fan of their music. It's not really my cup of tea, but they, you know, there was that famous story where they would practice for 4 hours. You know, their band, they dedicated their lives to their band. They would practice for about 3 to 4 hours, and then they would all sit at laptops, put on some music, and they would spend 4 hours adding people on their MySpace and messaging people and marketing their shit. And you could do that. I mean, hey, in the comedy world, that MySpace made Dane Cook.
Yeah.
So I miss it.
And no character limits.
Right? And that you had a blog too. You had a blog on MySpace. Remember that?
Yes.
Were you a note gal? Did you do the MySpace notes?
I did. I was in college, so I was an English major, so I would post a lot of my writing that was getting published on campus and stuff like that. And then, you know, and people would actually read it, because back then people had better attention spans.
Did you have a live journal?
Yes.
I never did a live journal. I don't know why. I mean, I had a blog. I had a Blogspot. Did you have a Blogspot?
Yeah.
Okay. See, I was just a Blogspot guy. I didn't do the live journal thing. I was just a blog spotter.
You're bringing back memories. I didn't even remember what they were called.
Do you remember Spiderweb? No, that was a thing. And then there was do you remember X Page? Do you remember those?
X page.
That was like
Sounds dirty.
right, it does, but it was like EX Page. And that was like the easiest way to build a website if you really didn't know anything. Like back before WordPress, back before Squarespace, back before Wix, back before any of that stuff. There was a thing called X Page where you had to have their URL. It would be xpage.com/whatever. And you could have this very, very basic looking like web page that I don't know if any of that stuff is still online, but yeah, when I was 12, my little garage band, we had an X Page where it was just a picture of us standing in front of our like one of our parents' fireplaces, like, and the drummer was holding his drumsticks, and then we would we didn't have any music because you couldn't upload an MP3 or anything like that, but you could be like, we're a band, and that was it.
That sounds amazing.
Oh man, I was so ashamed that we because we were very young, so we didn't get booked hardly ever. So I was like so ashamed of that I would like make up venues that didn't really exist. And just, like basically, if we had practice in our like drummer's garage and we opened the garage and a couple of our friends would like stop by and watch for a few minutes, which did happen, I would put that on our website as a show. Like I'd be like, well, we played a show. That was a show. And I would just make up I forget what we named, but we had this venue that we named, and it was just my buddy's parents' garage. But it was, and this was before you could like Google Maps or anything like that. So it's not like people would be like, what the fuck is this place? And then find out it's not really a place. So I would just,
you guys were playing and like the only people in the house were your parents, then you can say sold out show.
Sold out show. I mean, yeah, we had our venue was like so hip. Not a lot of people knew about it because it was actually just a house. And, but I remember that I was so embarrassed that like no one would book us because we were like so young and inexperienced and stuff. That I'd be like, oh, well, that was a show. We had a show today. I forget what we called the venue, but like, yeah, that was. You could probably still find that somewhere lurking around in the dark corners of the internet.
You need to find a picture because I want to see that.
I mean, I think at my parents' house I have a bunch of like developed pictures and stuff like that. My mom's been like going through just a bunch of random stuff in their basement and whatnot because they're empty nesters and blah blah blah. And the other day she came across one of my first band's patches. Remember like the patches you could get? I mean, they still sell that stuff, but like we had patches. And then she came across a cassette of our music, and I asked her not to throw that away. She would like send me pictures, and she'd be like, yeah, do you want? And a lot of times I'd be like, yeah, throw that shit away. That's like a textbook from college. I don't know how that still is around anywhere, but yeah, you could donate that or whatever. Maybe someone could use it. But yeah, when she came across my band's old cassette tape, I was like, yeah, save that. I don't know how I'd be able to play it.
What your name was?
Oh, we were called Open Till 2. Like, that's what we were called. And it was because
when you're young, that's like, whoa, 2 a.m. Holy shit.
Actually, that did help us because that helped people remember us because once we like were just old enough that we could start playing, like we were like 14, 15. So it was like old enough that like you could put us on a show and it wasn't totally ridiculous. That helped people remember us because yeah, they're that really fucking young band that's named after Last Call at a Bar, which is hilarious because none of them are going to a fucking bar. They're like 12. Yeah. So that helped people remember us. They're like, yeah, Open Till 2. That really applies to you guys. But here's the funny part. We were called Open Till 2 because we used to skateboard in a Taco Bell parking lot near where we lived. We just lived in the suburbs. And we would skateboard in this Taco Bell parking lot. And whenever they would kick us out, which inevitably happened after like an hour, we would go have band practice. So, and the Taco Bell parking lot that we skateboarded in was open till 2 a.m. Well, the Taco Bell was open till 2 a.m. and there was a sign that said open till 2. So we were like skateboarding, and we were like, what should we call our band? And we see this sign that says open till 2. And we were like, that's funny, I guess, maybe. And we called our band Open Till 2. At one point, because we thought it was really funny, we called ourselves Wrinkly Old Men, because we thought it was funny that we were like 13 and we called our band Wrinkly Old Men. It was so stupid. It was so dumb. We were 12, whatever.
That's amazing.
But yeah, we were like, we're Wrinkly Old Men. Like I remember one time we had like, I remember we told like our friend's older brother, like, he's like, what's your dumb little band called? And we were like, Wrinkly Old Men. And he's like, no, it's not. He's like, think of a name. Like, are you kidding? Don't call yourselves that, or just don't do this anymore. Yeah, right. That was a close second. That was like, I forget what else but yeah, we settled on Open Till 2. And I mean, I don't know. It was like, I mean, I grew up in like a suburb where if you wanted to do something creative, people thought there was something wrong with you. You know, I mean, it's just that kind of world. So we were like trying to like play punk rock music and stuff, and we're just lucky enough to even know what it was. You know?
Yeah.
Which is funny because even like all these years later, when I came to Southern California, I kind of felt a little bit of a sense of victory where it's like, you know, I finally arrived. This is the land that created so much of the stuff that I loved as a kid. And it seemed like such a foreign thing. Like everything I loved was made in California. And it just seemed like such a foreign land where it's like, oh man, California. I mean, it was this mystique that even lasted through my 20s. I was like, California, you know, and it's shut down now, but but the weather's still great.
Yeah, well, I've never been to California, but before all this, you know, clusterfuck started, I hit you up and said I was going to do a book tour with Pat in California. Yeah. So hopefully when things, fingers crossed, get better, I'm still going to California and we're still going to do a book tour. So hopefully we can still do some shows with you guys and stuff like that, because I'm excited. I've never been.
Oh, you're gonna love it. And yeah, and I can't wait for that. And I'm very much looking forward to that. And I mean, people who watch this show, they hear me talk about it so much because it really, not being able to perform live, it's like a piece of yourself is just missing. It hurts. And so folks, hold on to that good news. The Save Our Stages bill passed. That is good. That does help. That means that some of the venues we all know and love will hopefully still be standing next year. So that's something. Joy, where can people learn more about you?
Well, I was just on Nina Turner podcast. Hello, somebody. Our episode just dropped. I was with my co-author, Cody. You probably know him as Peter Douche / Pat the Burner / Nate's Liver. And Nina interviewed us about our new book. It's a parody. And it's a parody of so-called resistance. Some of our characters are Nancy Pagosi, Alyssa Shalano, Joyanne Greed, Jennifer Poubin, Soledad O'Lion,
James Scarville. That was my personal favorite. James Scarville.
So many people love James.
He was so yeah. Well, I don't want to give away anything in the book, but it's like he would just say these off the wall things that made no sense, and it was just this sort of like good old boy Southern fried analogy that made no sense whatsoever. And yeah, it was
Nina was
really funny.
Nina said, "I know these people. That is accurate. Like, I know these people." And I was like,
totally.
Yeah. But actually, we came up with the James Scarville stuff because I remember Dr. Phil saying, "I remember when I was knee high to a grasshopper." So then I looked up all these things like Dr. Phil sayings, and I was like, "Oh my God, perfect. oh my God, another one. Perfect. So that's kind of how we got some of our sayings.
And people can get that book at savageandpat.com, right? You guys still got
Yes.
that? Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
We have a special right now. We're doing 2 for $30, which is like our lowest price ever. Our books are independently written and printed, no Amazon. So they come directly from Pat and I. We're still signing. So if you'd like one of us to sign in our, a particular message, we can do that. And we ship all books first class, which is 2 to 3 days, and we ship within 24 hours. So yes, please check us out.
That's awesome. So savageandpat.com, and then where can people find your show?
So I just joined something called Roar Media on YouTube, and it's something some of us created, myself and other live streamers created to highlight women, LGBTQ, and people of color. So it's a network kind of trying to give voice to people who don't necessarily always have bigger shows. So Roar Media, and my show is Savage Joy with the Unruly Hour. And I have some great guests coming up. So also I have a YouTube, Savage Joy Marie Mann, and I've uploaded over 300 of my prior shows on that. So you can subscribe to that as well.
Nice. So check it out, savageandpat.com. Check her out on Roar Media, Savage Joy. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. And shout out to some of the super chatters. Breathweight, Bone Spurs, Quackerbush the Fourth. Rome is burning and the ruling class is helping themselves to unlimited Dom Perignon and caviar. I feel ya. I feel ya. Sam Dean, what's up, buddy? I hope everything is well in Australia, and I can't wait to see you again out there. Speaking of content creators, Disney are withholding novel royalties from authors. Really? The rich get richer, right? This is disgraceful. Disney must pay. That's terrible. I haven't heard about this, so I don't know any of the details, but that's ridiculous, and it would not surprise me at all, though, unfortunately. Thank you very much for that, Sandine. Thank you very much for that, Braithwaite. Thank you very much. I appreciate you all. You help keep the show on the air. Everybody check it out, savageandjoy.com. Tomorrow will be the
Savage and Pat.
Savage and Pat. Did I say Savage and Joy?
Yes, it's all me.
It's all me. Savage and Pat. Savageandpat.com. How's Duchess? Is she okay? The dog?
Oh, she's good. She's snoring on the floor.
Yeah, so is Lucy. Lucy's asleep on the couch.
Aww.
I guess our pets aren't impressed.
Lucy always gives me the butt.
Yeah, she does. She's been chilled today. She was a little excited because I refilled her water. And whenever that happens, she thinks she's going to get food too. And I'm like, no, I fed you already. You're just getting some water. And she's like, oh, but that's not exciting. I don't drink much of that. I'm a cat. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but I'm not just going to give you more food because you thought it was a cool idea. I can't do that. And, but eventually she's just like, okay, yeah, I'm going to stop trying. So she's taking a nap now. But she's got a brush and a treat in her future. So everybody check it out. savageandpat.com. Thank you very much, Braithwaite. Thank you very much, Sam Dean. You all keep this show on the air. Tomorrow will be the last official Get Your News On with Ron stream of 2020. It'll be our last episode, and then we're taking a year-end break. I'll be dropping more details tomorrow. But in the meantime, and of course tomorrow, same time, same channel, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Duchess says woof. Lucy says meow. Joy says peace. I say peace. See you tomorrow.
Thank you so much.